Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome back to Children's Church. I'm so glad to have you here with me. I just realized I could be reading out of a children's Bible. Miss Ashley, could you get me the Bible with the clouds on it, and I'll open to Daniel chapter 6 in there. So all this month we've been talking about Bible basics, and today we're talking on Daniel again. Well, last week we were in chapter 3 to 4. This week we're in chapter 6 with the most famous story from the book of Daniel. It's about Daniel. Now, okay, the whole book is mostly about Daniel because he was a prophet. But we've been talking about faith too, not even intentionally. I picked these lessons because I thought they were good basic things to learn. But the thing they all have in common is faith and steadfastness. And that's what we're going to talk about with Daniel today. Thank you, Miss Ashley. I realized I've been reading out of a King James this whole time, and there was children's Bibles right there. The plot against Daniel. Darius decided to appoint 120 satraps over the kingdom, stationed throughout the realm, and over them 3 administrators, including Daniel. These satraps would be accountable to them, so the king would not be defrauded. Daniel distinguished himself above the administrators and the satraps because he had an extraordinary spirit. So the king planned to set him over the whole realm. The administrators and the satraps, therefore, kept trying to find something they could charge Daniel with regarding the kingdom. But they couldn't find any corruption because he was trustworthy, and no negligence or corruption was found in him. Then these men said, "We'll never find any charge against Daniel unless we find something against him concerning the law of God." So the administrators and the satraps went to Darius and said, "O King Darius, may you live forever. Beware of administrators flattering you." All the administrators of the kingdom, the prefects, the satraps, advisors, and governors have agreed. The king should establish an ordinance and enforce an edict that for 30 days, anyone who petitions any god or man except for you, the king, be thrown in the lion's den. Therefore, your majesty, establish an edict and sign the documents with the law of the Medes and Persians. It is irrevocable and cannot be changed. And King Darius signed the document. When Daniel learned that the document had been signed, he went into his house. The windows in its upper room opened toward Jerusalem, and 3 times a day he got down on his knees, prayed, and gave thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel petitioning and imploring his God. They approached the king and asked about his edict. "Didn't you sign an edict for 30 days that any man who petitions any god except you, the king, will be thrown in the lion's den?" The king answered, "As the law of the Medes and Persians, it stands irrevocable." And they replied to the king, "Daniel, one of the Judean exiles, has ignored you, the king, and the edict you signed, for he prays 3 times a day." As soon as the king heard this, he was very displeased. He set his mind on rescuing Daniel and made every effort until sundown to deliver him. Then these men went to the king and said to him, "You as king know this law of the Medes and Persians, that no edict or ordinance of the king can be changed." The king was trying to change the law to save Daniel. He trusted him and he cared about him, and he was tricked. But the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him in the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." I think we know he will. A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the signet rings of his nobles, so nothing in regard to Daniel could be changed. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and he could not sleep. At first light of dawn, when the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he reached the den, he cried out in anguish to Daniel, "Daniel, servant of the living God," the king said, "has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" And then Daniel spoke. "May the king live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lion's mouth. They haven't hurt me, for I was found innocent before him, and I have not committed any crime against my king." The king was overjoyed and gave orders to take Daniel out of the den. So Daniel was taken out of the den uninjured, for he trusted in his God. The king gave the command, and those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and thrown in the lion's den. Oh, that's dark. I'm going to leave that last part off. You can look it up yourself if you want. It's Daniel chapter 6, 24, verse 24 to the end. But I'm not going to read it. That's a little dark. Then King Darius wrote to those of every people, every nation, every language who live in all the earth. Admittedly, this was probably just in the Fertile Basin, but it's fine. May your prosperity abound. I issue a decree in all my royal dominion. People must tremble in fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his dominion has no end. He rescues and delivers. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth, for he has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Did that sound familiar to any of you? He endures forever, and his kingdom shall not pass away, O ancient of days. A lot of our songs are taken from scripture, but it's fascinating to me to think that a king who did not serve God, at least not up until this point, wrote something so profound, so true about our God, that thousands of years later, we're still putting it to music to sing it back to God. What an incredible testament to the faith that Daniel had. What an incredible testament to God's power to rescue, that thousands of years later, we're still repeating the words of a man who may have started out that day not believing in God, and then sent out to the entirety of his kingdom. I don't know if you guys know how large the Persian Empire was. It was massive. It's a very large empire, and he sent it out throughout the entirety of it to bow down and worship before God, because he is the God who saves. So all this month we have been talking about Bible basics, and honestly, the most basic thing we've taken from this is faith. Moses had faith through the plagues that God would deliver them out of Egypt. Noah had enough faith to fill an ark. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had enough faith to walk in the fire and come out not even smelling of smoke. And Daniel had enough faith to pray every day, even knowing it was against the law, 3 times a day with his windows open, and walk into a lion's den and call out to his king the next morning that God had saved him. They had shut the lion's mouth because he was innocent. It's interesting to me what God does, because I didn't plan for all of our lessons to be about faith. This event was supposed to be Bible basics, but it really turned into lessons on faith. And I think that's interesting, that every time you look at the Bible, you can find something new to learn from these stories. That's why I set out to teach Bible basics, because, yeah, there's stories you guys probably know, but there's still always something to learn from them. So I want you guys to remember that, and I will see you again next week. I hope you enjoy the craft. I hope you enjoy the song that was posted. And have a wonderful week.